where business ideas and passions turn into profit. Napkin ideas are no longer tucked away in drawers, and women around the globe are turning their hobbies into million-dollar businesses. Welcome to Million Dollar Hobbies. Here's your host, world-renowned jewelry designer and Shop HQ celebrity, Victoria Wieck.
Welcome to another episode of the Million Dollar Hobbies Show. If you've always wanted to know how to improve, your business, upscale it, all of that, it actually starts with you. And you know that I'm a very big proponent of that. I'm a huge proponent of the one single thing you could do to change your life. Today's guest, his name is Wieck Stringfellow. He's somebody who kind of epitomizes everything that I've been saying on my podcast about all the things, little things and big things, the single thing you could do to start your journey to success. Wieck comes to the show with over 20 years of experience, and really impressive experience. He's actually worked with companies like PayPal, Visa, Target, Amazon, Rosetta Stone, and so many more. And he's made his impact, with those kind of companies. But what really impressed me the most about Wieck, and this is why he was invited to this show, is his ability to help, every employee, every person, no matter what you think your abilities are, to help every person innovate and elevate. And so I'm just so excited to have him here. And I'm so thankful that he was able to make this time so that we can all share this amazing knowledge that he has acquired over many years. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Wieck Stringfellow. Welcome to the show.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So as we talked briefly before, innovation for some reason, and I don't want many of you to email me like with hate things, because I'm not trying to make a political, statement of any kind. But I do think that, when we were growing up, the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, I felt like they were at the height of innovation. That's 80s is about when we got the internet, the laptop computers, the cell phones, all of that. I feel like that innovation, when I hear the word innovation, the last person who really innovated anything to me was like Jeff Bezos with Amazon. Even music. Have you noticed that even music is being regurgitated? A lot of the movies are, doing their third and fourth and fifth, rendition of whatever it is that came out in the 80s. So when I saw what you do with your program called How Do, I was really impressed with that. So tell me a little bit about how you got to what you're doing now and what it is that you do now to impact the world.
Sure. So when I was a kid, I wanted to be an inventor more than anything. Like I entered all the science competitions and science fairs, and they had one that was based on invention. And I came in second place making a better lunchbox. But ever since then, I just always liked the idea of building things. Real early in my career, when I was an intern, I learned that if I solved problems that people didn't know were problems, I could make more money than if they just did the job they asked me to do. And I kept scaling at that problem solving in my job until ultimately I was recruited by Amazon. And at Amazon, it was 10 years after Amazon launched, and it was still a very young company. There's a million things to get done, and it was a great place to get stuff done. And they gave me a lot of lessons about how to appropriately characterize problems, really deeply understand what the problem is, put it in the language of the customer, and then look at, critically what competitors would do or could do or were doing in the space. Look at critically the commercial opportunity, how much money could we make from it, and then make a really solid pitch. And that was what my job was at Amazon. I just kind of hopped around different teams and led the development of new products and fixed problems. When I left Amazon, I did that for Visa, Target, Rosetta Stone, PayPal, and a bunch of startups. And what I learned along the way is that there's a fairly generic process that can work for almost anyone in almost any context. If you're a big company, if you're a small company, really starts with learning about the customer, learning about the competition in the marketplace, and then doing a pretty, thoughtful analysis about what the real opportunities are that are present today and how you can take advantage of those opportunities using available technology and available tools. Business, in my opinion, is fairly simple. There are really only three tools: build, buy, or partner. If you're going to build something, it's product management, service management, or some sort of platform design. If you're going to buy something, it's mergers and acquisitions and corporate venture capital. And if you're going to partner with something, you use like incubators, accelerators, or other forms of partnership agreements. But that's business. And once you understand the problem and you understand the commercial opportunity and you understand the tools that are associated with that opportunity, you need to find the team that can do that. And I think so many people get wrapped around the axle of their emotions or what they wanted for their business or their dreams for their business, and they lose sight of the purpose of business. And the purpose of business is simply to grow revenue, decrease operating costs, mitigate risks, empower employees, and delight customers. If you do those 5 things well, you'll have a successful business. But so many people get focused on what they want or what they hear their customers say they want, and they lose sight of the overall kind of holistic objective. And so I've designed a course that tries to help anyone and everyone learn first principles around business and teach themselves how to move from an idea to something that's in a customer's hands and making money.
Okay, so that was a lot of information that was shared just now, and I just want to share with you, those who are listening, that one of the consistent feedbacks if I get it from the active listeners who listen to every show every week, is that I don't share enough of what I've gone through. The building my business from $0 to $500 million. And when I listened to Wes just describe the 5 pillars of running a successful business, I have to say a lot of what he said actually resonates with me on, I didn't know then. I was just too naive and, simple, and my business grew over 30 years. So it's not like I had a plan. But looking back, a lot of the things that he said actually resonate with me. But here is the one key thing that you all need to take away from his entire, presentation just now, which is it all starts and ends with the customer. It's, when you have a business, it could be that you're an artist. It could be that you are a musician, where you're expressing your feelings, you're expressing your desires. Even then, your customer, the end user who absorbs your information, is who you have to kind of cater your life around. And so you almost have to, every product you build, every pitch you make, you almost have to think about, okay, how am I going to present this to my customer? How is she going to use it? And I think that when you do that, and you can work it backwards, right? So sometimes customers don't even realize that they actually have a real problem, or that, they actually need a product until they actually see it. And so, it's not really about you, but it's really more about the customer. And I think that what you just said about, business really comes down to, I would even go even simpler than that. Business really comes down to solving problems for your customer. That's number one. And, it may be a perceived problem. It may be a real, but it all comes down to that and how effectively you can solve their problem. So if you do that, and I just love the conversation that we had. I wish I had recorded it before we went live, which is, and I'm with you on that. Like, I share information freely to everybody. Somebody told me the other day when I first launched my online course, everybody said, like, do you have any testimonials? And I said, yeah, I've got tons of testimonials. I just never got paid for it because I've always given free speeches, free webinars and free, workshops to people, because I'm just so delighted at being able to share what works. And a lot of times when you share that freely, you learn in the process of sharing because, they will give you feedback. But the other thing too is there's just such joy in sharing. So, I don't have to get paid for every speech. I don't have to get paid for every workshop that I do. I don't think about like, how am I going to really make the most money out of this thing? When you, freely share, people come to you. So whether you're selling, artistic cabinetry, or you're selling something that coffee. I mean, think about what Starbucks did, with simple things like coffee. They've almost made it such a cult that it's cool to park your car, go to Starbucks, stand in line. There's nothing else in life that I would want to stand in line for 30 minutes, to overpay, 500%. It's crazy, right? But this is what happens when you really delight customers and have them love you, and you attract legions of fanatic fans. To me, Starbucks coffee didn't even taste that great.
Oh.
I mean, if you think about it, their coffee is so bitter that they have to add, the whipped cream and all this other stuff. And I was like a pure coffee drinker before. I mean, I was like a black coffee drinker before, and now they've kind of converted me into like drinking soy latte. Now I'm not, it's really interesting. I'm actually allergic to dairy. So the next closest thing is like soy dairy.
I'm the same. And that's my favorite drink too.
Yeah. So I end up with, but we digress. But I think that what you said about all the different pillars, it's not really about you. And I don't want to sound harsh, but when I say it's not about you, of course, you do still have to honor your desires and your dreams. And your desires and dreams could be that you want to make ultimately, if you have a product or service that really serves your target market well, they're going to either save time or money or hassles, and they will then be able to contribute. So the dying question I have for you, West, is, so here you are, when I look at your accomplishments, it's all these big companies like Amazon, PayPal, Visa, these are all corporations that we have heard of. So are there lessons that you've learned that you could maybe share that a small business person, a person that might have herself, maybe one employee, herself under 10 employees, that's trying to innovate? Because when you hear the word innovate, it sounds like it costs money. It sounds like you need, I mean, don't you think that's true? When you hear the word innovate, immediately you think, oh, I can't do that because I'm not an engineer. I'm not a scientist. I don't have the mega bucks, so I can't innovate. So what do you say to that?
Well, I think it's a really fair question. And I totally understand why when people hear the word innovation, it's a scary word. And I think, candidly, I feel like that word has been so used and abused, it's almost meaningless at this point.
That's true.
The reality of innovation, the definition is really simple. It's introducing a new good or service to the market. That's
okay.
No, that
sounds a lot less scary, by the way.
Yeah, right. And do you know the definition of an entrepreneur is a business person who takes on greater financial risk? I mean, that's not like, it's not like you have to be Elon Musk to be an entrepreneur. You could just do something that's moderately more risky than being an employee.
Elon didn't take any risks with his own money.
Yeah, he actually did companies he runs. Yeah. But so for me, for example, a personal example would be, I built and sold my own business. I was the sole employee, and I'm not a great engineer. I'm a terrible engineer. But I sold the business when it was on paper. I sold the patent and the concept. So, I think innovation takes many forms. And I think, being an entrepreneur is really about trying to figure out how something you're passionate about connects with a customer's problem. And it may not be a direct connection. It may not be like when you wake up out of bed, you have the right specific idea to solve that problem. But the process of innovation, in my opinion, is one of learning, just aggressively learning. And I don't care if you're a big company or a single individual sitting in your bedroom dreaming about what to do with the rest of your life. Everyone has to learn from the customer. And what I advocate for is a really structured process of learning so that you don't waste time and you maximize your potential for real knowledge gaining. And so the process that I've created for Howdo is based, again, upon best practice at big companies, but I also founded and led a Techstars accelerator, which is all startups. And I built and sold my own company as the only employee. So, I've done a lot of work with startups in my career. Out of the 20 years of my career, about 7 years were in startups. The process that I've created works for everyone. And it starts with doing secondary research, which means Google. Ask Google a million questions. If you have an idea for a business, open up your laptop or your tablet and just start typing phrases into Google. And you'll see that there's probably some information out there. Like if you want to build a bakery, open up Google Maps and look at all the bakeries that are in your neighborhood. Get in your car and drive to all of them. Walk in the store and ask them how business is going. Look at what they're selling. Look at the price point. If you want to do, any industry, just look immediately around you at the folks who are in that industry. Look, what I then tend to do is specifically zero in on the people who are leading the businesses that are currently existing. I follow their social media accounts. I read their posts. I look at any of their blog posts or any podcasts they're on that I listen to, any YouTube videos they've made, I watch. I just try to get as much information as I can about the marketplace so I understand what I'm talking about. Then once I have a general feeling of okay, I might know, like, let's just stay with the bakery example. I might know about all the bakeries in my neighborhood. Then I try to meet some of the customers in the neighborhood. So I'll post a Craigslist ad and I'll say, hey, I'll give you $25 Amazon gift certificate if you'll sit down, have a cup of coffee with me, or in these pandemic times, if it's safer, you feel more comfortable, Zoom or on the phone, but just talk to customers. Now, some Google product managers wrote a great book called Sprint. And, Google's one of the best companies in the world in terms of using data to make product decisions. And one of the things that blew me away about this book, Sprint, is they recommend that if you talk to 5 customers of an existing product, just 5, you're going to get 80% of the feedback that you would get if you talk to 20, 30, 40, 50. And so let's say you want to make a bakery, find 5 customers of the existing bakeries and have some conversations with them, and then get all the feedback you can. What do you think about the existing bakery? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What would you like to see? How's the price point? And make sure as you have these conversations, you have really open conversations. Don't go in there with your product and say, I want you to buy my product. Tell me what you think. Go in there and try to keep your mind open as much as possible. Try to listen to the words the customer says. The customer is going to speak in a different way than you think. Every time I talk to a customer, I'm constantly impressed with how they describe my product to me in words I would never use. And I'm also impressed how if I listen to the words they use, I can start learning more about what my product really is. And I can use those words to talk to my customer more effectively. I've been in the industry for 20 years. So when I talk about stuff, it's like nerd. It's just all this technical crap. When I go talk to the customer, they're like, they don't know all the technical stuff. So they say it to me in a much more colloquial, much more human, much more accessible way. And if I learn that from my customer, I can ask them more specific questions. I get more insight. I know how to market to them. I know how to sell to them. Helps me long term. Then once I have a deep qualitative understanding, and again, that can come from 5 conversations, not always, but generally 5 conversations, then I try to test it qualitatively. And I use something like SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, and I try to get a statistically significant number of responses. Now, if you're in a small market, 100, 200 people might be enough. If you're trying to do something national, you should try to get like 1,000 people from the demographic that you're targeting. And hopefully through your initial research and through your initial conversations, you'll start getting an idea of your demographic. And all you want to do in that quantitative survey is take the information you learn from the conversations, the qualitative, and validate that they're true at scale. Once you've done that, you have a much better idea of your customer than most of your competitors will, because no one does that work.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I love what you just shared. Many people, like I said, I am so customer centric that I actually rarely talk about myself ever. And that's one of the biggest complaints I get from my podcast, because so many people turn to my podcast because I've sold over 10 million pieces of jewelry. And they basically want to know how I did it. And I never share that. But what you're saying, it actually is exactly what I did before the digital age. So, I started my business in 1989 and didn't have any money. And I had no idea what I was doing. I literally had no clue. So naive. But I just went to like different department stores and asked the buyers, like, the managers, jewelry department managers, if you had this type of design and it was just all sketches, would you be able to sell it? And the amount of information they gave me, in fact, they were so excited about it. Many of them actually sold for me off of the sketches.
Right.
So, and that's how my business actually started. So I started my business with no money, like $30. This is before computers, before anything. So then I thought, well, that's actually, how real could that be? Because the two stores that actually sold for me were Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue on Wilshire and Rodeo. So it's a Rodeo Drive store. And you know what? In my mind, I was thinking to myself, that can't be the rest of America. I'm going to need more than those two stores. So just like you said, you needed a bigger sample, right? Because the two people that I talked to weren't really indicative. In my mind, they weren't nothing like, the stuff that they ordered for thousands of dollars. I personally didn't know anybody that would buy it from me. My personal circle of people couldn't afford the stuff that they thought they were buying. So when I went out to other stores all around Southern California, I got a pretty good view. And then even then, I didn't think that was all of America, because I thought that was Southern California. So my first trip actually was to Dallas, which I thought was much more middle America. So what you're saying is, basically, in order for you to find out what your customers want, go find customers. Okay. Even if it's just 5, I completely agree with that. 5 is, 5 gives you, first of all, if you talk to 5 people and they all, just talking to anybody, my personal experience, when you talk to people, they're just overjoyed a real person actually talking to you. You're not a bot or anything, you're not showing off on social media, telling everybody how great you're doing. Right. So you're asking their opinion. They'll be brutally honest with you. And then you're getting some feedback from them. And I also loved what you said about how you think about your product a certain way, but the customer then sees it in a different way. And I just think that that's a key important issue, because a lot of times when you think customers see it one way, and I'm going to give you an example of this in a minute, and you think you're giving it another way, there will be a disconnect in how you message them in the end. If you come up with a marketing ad and, let's say you're advertising on Facebook, I have this wonderful, beautiful jewelry for you to wear to work. And then the customer says, oh my God, that's like, a milestone jewelry, heirloom. I would never wear it to work. Well, there's a huge disconnect between those two, right? Because you think they're going to want to wear it to work and to everything. And then the person says, no, for me, that would be such a, incredible thing that I would want to keep it in my jewelry box. I don't want to lose it. I don't want to ruin it. So what happens is like, you have this disconnect. If you think, so you have to really figure out how the customer uses it. Sometimes let's go back to the word innovation one more time, because I think that a lot of people, when you say the word innovation, especially coming from someone like yourself who have worked with Amazon, sort of like the innovation capital of the world, they think of like inventions.
Yeah.
Right. They don't really think about sort of just improving things that are already out there. So innovating could mean the same product delivered different way, same product used different way.
Very much.
A similar product that is that elevates the personal experience. Coffee is a great example. I wouldn't say that Starbucks actually innovated coffee, but the way we use it, the way we now view coffee. There are countries that used to only drink tea until Starbucks got there, and now nobody drinks tea in those countries anymore. UK being one of them. So I love everything you've shared so far. And so now you've got the 5, I love that you broke it down, because, a Visa, PayPal, here's the other thing I was going to say is, I wish the bigger companies that you worked for actually did what you say.
I know.
They don't do it because they don't listen to us, right?
Yeah.
It's insane. I hate PayPal.
They're so different.
I don't like PayPal. They make it so convoluted, and it's not simple. for me. Like, it's not simple at all. Like, I don't understand why I have to put in my, my information and, and then you have to put in all your credit cards just to go to their platform. I mean, why can't I just, it's just so stupid. And I got my gripes with Target and even Amazon. I've got my gripes on that. So basically, none of what I'm saying is that if you're a small company, you are in better position to be nimble, to be surgically effective in the market that you are in. So you can make a lot of profits. You don't need to make billions of dollars to make money if you got one employee and that employee is you.
No, I agree. I think that when you get, you talk about PayPal being difficult, like, having worked there for 3 years, I was the head of platform there.
So it's all your fault.
It is, for real. I had to do a lot with KYC, AML, CTF, know your customer, anti-money laundering, counterterrorism financing. If anything's difficult on PayPal, it's not PayPal's fault. It's generally regulations that come in and make it hard. And it's PayPal rides this weird line between banks and blah, blah, blah. And, the challenge when you get big is the government starts to pay attention to you. And when the government starts to pay attention to you, they want their piece of the pie. They want to make sure that you're doing things the way they want things to be done. And that's, that the government has its agenda. Companies have their agenda. A lot of times those agendas aren't the same. When you're small, and most governments don't care about you. Most competitors will ignore you. Yeah. It gives you a lot of, I believe, a lot of latitude to take risks, to really experiment with your customers. And I wanted to touch on one of the things that you said earlier, which is, innovation doesn't necessarily mean invention. In fact, I think some of the world's best innovations are taking something that worked in one industry and doing it in an industry that hasn't done it yet.
Right.
Like, there's so many examples of technology specifically that was really helpful for the military and is now used by everyone on earth for everyday things, like using a cell phone or Velcro or zippers. Like, all of those things were designed for specific activities. A lot of them have to do with space. And now we use them like in our kitchen, like microwave. And so, I think there's a lot of utility in technology out there that hasn't been brought to the customer in a way that makes it accessible to the customer. And I also think, part of the work that I'm trying to do with How Do is help people with their inner monologue. I think the biggest barrier to innovation starts with the stories we tell ourselves. And, if we tell ourselves that we can't innovate or that it's hard or I'm not this or I'm not that, we're literally ending the story with that thought rather than giving ourselves permission to try and maybe fail. But I think failure is literally just failure and learning. If you failed, but you learned, that's not failure. That's an iteration. That means you took a step, it didn't work. You're going to take the step again, but you're going to do it smarter. If you keep taking the same step with the same process, that's crazy. That's, doing the same thing twice and expecting a different result's insanity. But if you learn every time and you use that learning to scale, that's not failure. That's iterating. And everyone iterates on the path to success. Amazon, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they all iterate. So I feel like if you give yourself a more positive story, like, I can do this, I might have messed it up the first time, but here's why I messed it up. Here's what I learned about. And then go look at people who are successful, who are your role models, your aspirational innovators. Watch how they got there. There's a ton of failure on that process. No one got up out of bed at 18 and is like, I'm going to be a billionaire, and the next day was a billionaire. There's a huge 20 to 50 year journey for most of these people.
The next day was 50 years later.
Right. Exactly. So I really think that I really believe that there's a lot of power and capability in everyone. But we often are held down by the narratives that we tell ourselves, and we're held down by potentially stories other people tell us. But innovation's not scary. Invention is not scary. Invention's harder than innovation, that's for sure, because you have to do something net new. But innovation is everywhere in so many things. There are so many problems in the world right now. People say, how are we ever going to fix this? And I swear to God, it's going to be innovation, and it's going to be someone who's alive today that fixes it. And it could be you, it could be anyone.
Yeah. So I want to actually end our talk. We started with customer-centric mindset. and we're going to end it with the customer-centric mindset. And I think that whether you're innovating or inventing, it becomes easier the clearer you have in your mind of who your customer is and what they want from you. Yep. So the minute you understand, for example, your customer now wants to save time, and they want safe food, they want all of that, and they want a new way to microwave something that, whatever it is, it becomes a lot easier to innovate and invent once you figure out what your end goal is. So again, you're going to go back to the customer and see what they want and how they're going to use it and what problems you're solving for them. In terms of the obstacles along the way, I think I agree with you on that too, that as a society over time, when I first immigrated to America, my father told me that America is the promised land where all dreams come true, which was actually a lie. He didn't know it at the time, but you have to kind of work for your dreams, right? But when I came to America, the prevailing thought was that America is still the promised land. It's the land of opportunity, and that all you need is the opportunity. And as long as you're willing to work for it, as long as you're persistent and tenacious and you believe in yourself, you're going to get there. Today, that is not the prevailing thought. Today, a lot of millennials, a lot of people like who are almost nearing retirement age will tell you that, unless you have something so unique and chic and something, different, that, you're better off in corporate America. You're not going to succeed because the world is really complicated. And so what happens is, as a society, we condition our children. Our graduate schools are teaching in business schools how to plug into a system, how to lead a team and how to report to your boss, organizational skills, all this stuff. So I can see why you might be sitting there listening to this podcast, wondering if any of this stuff actually applies to you. I would, argue that, like America, if you look at all the companies we mentioned today, we're talking PayPal, including Jeff Bezos at Amazon. All of these people started their companies with very little money, $5,000 or below. Google, Apple, all of the, Facebook, they were all started by some little dreamer with little idea of something. So I would say stop doubting yourself, because sometimes you might be the only thing that's in your way between you and your dream out there, and what have you got to lose? Because like West said, if you start something and you fail, I believe there is really no failure, because when you fail, but you get up and you learn something, how to do something better the next day, I would consider that a learning lesson. Now, if you do something and you succeed day one, let's say, you want to learn how to ride a bike. I mean, one of my kids learned how to ride a bike pretty quickly, and the other one fell like for about a year. So the one that, learned how to ride a bike pretty quickly, that was a success story. But then the one that didn't, eventually learned. So you learn a lot of things along the way. So there's everything that you want to have is worth trying, even if, you fear that failure, because that failure, it really isn't failure. It's a stepping stone. And so what I'm saying is, like, what Wes was saying was that, you gotta kind of like believe in yourself. Innovation isn't scary. Even invention is not scary. It's something that you're just gonna have to get used to, because don't you agree, with all the companies you worked for in the past, West, like, Target, Amazon, especially Amazon and Target, and to some extent Visa, these companies have evolved. Every year they evolve, right? And, do you remember when Target first opened? It was like the undesirable store. It was like a grade above Walmart. I mean, today that's the choice that the millennials go to. Go figure.
Oh yeah. Target's
right. Target is chic and, it's kind of hip now, So when I say we're going to end this segment with customer-centric thing here again, is that whether you innovate or not, whether you evolve or not, your customers are evolving.
Correct.
Every day. So you better stay in touch with the evolution, the innovation, and all that stuff that's happening around you.
Yes.
So do you want to add anything else to that as we end our segment?
I would say never get comfortable.
I agree with that too.
That principle that is, it's always day one. I think that's true for every business. So many businesses that I've worked for missed hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue just because they were like, whatever that thing is not going to be popular. I was in 2007, I was at one of the largest banks in Europe. I was talking to their head of innovation, and they're like, we think this Facebook thing is going to be done in like 2 years. They were very wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like,
he missed the mark by just a few inches.
Right.
Yeah.
But I see that so often. I see that in startup founders. I see that in big companies. And it's just a basic human behavior. Like, we like patterns and we like the familiar, and talking about stuff that's unknown or unfamiliar is very hard. And for a lot of people, that's deeply uncomfortable. But the more that we can make ourselves comfortable, specifically for me, right? Like, I'm surrounded by musical instruments. I am constantly learning new things. Like, I constantly challenge myself to learn new things so that I never get tired of the sensation of being unaware and feeling like a newbie. And that is where people become the most successful, is when they have the endurance to just consistently learn about the customer and never get complacent.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for spending all this time with us. And if you want to know more about West, he can be reached at howdo.com. It's like how do you do, HOWDO.com. And he will be launching a video series of a lot of, free information. And I'd highly recommend that you check it out, because he has, just like he said, he has found ways to, apply a lot of the principles that the bigger companies use. I mean, those bigger companies do research at a much different scale. And West is actually giving you them in smaller bites where you can actually apply it to your small business. So I appreciate you coming in and wish you all the luck in the world for your upcoming podcast, which is also called How Do Podcast. And thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Victoria. This is awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Million Dollar Hobbies, where we turn dreams into reality and passion into profit. According to ancient Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Congratulations on taking that first step today. For more information on how Victoria can help you turn your hobby into $1 million, and to download Victoria's free ebook on passion-based business ideas, visit milliondollarhobbies.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast player.